Mattress stitch is not actually a stitch, it is a seam, and it creates an invisible seam so that when your fabric is sewn together, you cannot tell where it has been joined. Ideally, you would want to use the same yarn that you used to knit with, and you can leave yourself a good long tail on your bind off so that you can use that to seam up. I am going to use a different color yarn just so that you can see it for this sample. And if you look at your knitting, this is just stockinette, of course. If you give it a little bit of a pull, you can see these strands here. And these strands are what you're going to be weaving your yarn into to seam. Okay, so I have my yarn here on my needle. And I'm just going to start by going into the stitch from my cast on edge, and that'll close it up at the bottom. So I'm just going to go in there with my needle. And then on my other piece, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to go into the stitch on my cast on edge. And you're going to be working back and forth between your pieces. Let me get my tail out of here. Okay, so now, and you don't want to work right on the edge. These are my edge stitches. I'm just going to move in a bit from the edge. So if I pull my fabric apart here, I can see that strand. Just going to stick your needle under that strand and pull your yarn through, and then go to your other piece of fabric, find your first strand, needle goes under, oops, there we go. So you can see you're just going back and forth. Go back to the other side and find your strand. And you want to stay in the same row. You don't want to start over here and then move over here and back again. Just stay in a straight line as you go. So you might be wondering how this creates an invisible join when I have something that looks like this. I will show you the neat trick to this seam that gives you the invisible join. And it's actually going to hide this yellow yarn pretty well. Like I said, ideally you would want to use the same yarn that you knit with, but if you didn't have a choice, this would hide a different color yarn pretty well. Okay, so I just have a few more strands to pick up here. think I have one more over here, maybe. No, okay. So when you get to the top of your fabric, just go up through the stitch on your bind off edge. And the same thing on this side. Okay, now all you want to do, usually I pull from both ends. You just start pulling on your yarn here. And don't pull too tight or too hard, or else your fabric will pucker up and it won't look pretty. Just pull gently until you can't pull anymore. And then you can see here, you have an invisible seam. You'd really be hard pressed to find where this was joined. So then you would just weave in your ends, of course. But this is what it looks like on the back. See if you pick this up, there's your yellow yarn, but you really can't tell. So this is stockinette, and you could use any stitch really. I have this little piece that I did in seed stitch that I seamed up. And the seam is right here, but you really can't tell. And that's the back of my seed stitch fabric. But that is Mattress Stitch. It makes a nice invisible join.